Hi everyone, I'm Thomas.
I'm Selena.
And I'm Ian.
As we move to virtual presentations and conferences, it's really important to consider about making connections with our delegates and how to make connections with the delegates and one another. I'm going to ask Ian and Selena some questions about how we can help do this. Ian, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, Thomas, absolutely. So the first one is to look at the camera, because what you naturally do if you're talking to people on the screen is look at them on the screen. So now I'm looking at Selena and now I'm looking at Thomas, and you can see there's a big difference between if I'm talking like this or if I'm talking like this. And if you're presenting to a group, it's much nicer to talk like this, because then they kind of feel a connection. So that would be my first suggestion. And another suggestion is to make it something personal, because people don't know you. So it's nice to break the ice by saying something personal, like something about the weather, or I just came on my bicycle here, or if the telephone goes, I'm sorry because I expect my kids coming from school, or whatever, something that kind of turns you into a human being and not just something on a screen. That I feel can also help.
And Selena, do you have any other suggestions with stories?
Yes, absolutely. So once you've created that connection at the beginning of your webinar and you've made sure that you've engaged with your delegates, it's really important to try and keep that connection. And when you're on a webinar, people's attention span is really, really short. And so we just need to try and keep it easy for them to keep paying attention. So what you need to do is you need to intersperse your messages and your theory with stories or with interactions or with something that's slightly more lighthearted. And you can see from this chart, this gives you a bit of an idea about how you might structure that. So you start with something that's lighthearted, and then you go into some messaging, and then you tell a story, and then you can go back to some messaging. And you create a kind of rhythm about your webinar. So don't try and give all the information to people all at once, because their attention span won't cope with that.
And in person, it can be quite difficult to make connections between delegates. It feels as though this is even harder when done virtually. Do you have any suggestions about how we can help delegates connect with one another?
Yeah, so you use breakout rooms and make them small. So 4, 5, 6 people max, that everybody gets a chance to say something. And then make sure that the time span of the breakout rooms is long enough for people to actually say something. And it can also help, if you're the moderator, to suggest what questions to discuss, of course, in the breakout room. Or to say, well, first do a brief round of introductions, just only 30 seconds per person, time it. And just tell the people where you're from and why you're coming to the forum, for example. The thing is, it's important to give people the chance to say something, because then they feel heard and they feel like there's more connection between them. But at the same time, you have to respect the situation that they might not want to say something. So you shouldn't push them too much. It's a balance, I think. Don't you think, Selena?
Absolutely. And I think, as well as breakout rooms, a lot of the time for this forum, people are doing pre-records. So there isn't the opportunity for a breakout room. So you can use other mechanisms that we've used traditionally in the past. There's a hashtag for the forum. So if you encourage your listeners to use the hashtag and to share their learning on Twitter, then you can help them to create connections that way. Encourage them to use the chat box when they're watching the recording, maybe to share ideas and their thoughts. And if they want to share their Twitter handles on the chat box, then that can help people to know how to get in touch with people who've got ideas that they want to discuss further. So that's another way that you can use.
Do you have any hints or tips of how you can manage chat boxes when we're dealing with much larger audiences, such as at the forum?
Well, Selena, I think your suggestion is to call Thomas.
Yes, if in doubt, call Thomas. Yeah, he's the hero around here. So yeah, what Thomas and I do is, if one of us is presenting, then the other one will log on to the webinar, and we'll keep an eye on the chat box and the questions. And we usually use WhatsApp and we message each other and say, oh, there's a lot of questions around this theme, or, you know, there's a good conversation going on in the chat box about that. So what that means is that the presenter doesn't have to be constantly looking at the chat box. So I just know that if Thomas is messaging me, then something will come up on WhatsApp. I need to read that quickly, and it makes life an awful lot easier and reduces the stress massively. So that's definitely worth doing.
Thank you both. That's some really handy and helpful suggestions as how we can make our presentations as impactful and as inclusive as possible.